close we are and how we are within range now of a major impact from people like ISIS. I have a tremendous amount of respect for our next guest, who is featured in that documentary tomorrow that airs tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. His name is James Woolsey, Admiral James Woolsey, and former director of the CIA. Jim, how are you, sir?
I'm fine, but I got an unwarranted promotion there. I never got above Army captain.
Really? I thought you were an admiral. We were just talking about that. Sorry about that.
It shows up in all sorts of places, but New York Times got it wrong once, and it went into a lot of newspaper records. But
wow,
nope,
okay. Well, good for you. Good for you. No stolen honor from you. For you.
Right.
Let me. I'm really concerned, and I've known you for a long time. I've watched you for a long time. I've read your books. You are a very honest man and a very sober assessment all the way along. I cannot get my arms around the way this country is acting almost on all fronts. I can't think of a time where we have ever faced an enemy that wants war with us more than ISIS. And yet we're acting as if they're not coming for us. They're not able to come for us. They won't hit us in a major dramatic fashion. And we're still treating them like they're JV team. They're not, and they want to do something dramatic to drag us into war. Do I have that right?
I think you do. I think they want to kill us or convert us, and those are the only two options for them. They want to recapitulate the caliphate that existed in a few years after Muhammad's death, that ran from France to what's now Pakistan. They
believe they're the army of Armageddon.
Yes, and they think that there will be an Armageddon in Syria, and they are as bad as it gets. They are ruthless. They are evil, and they want to kill or convert us.
You know, they closed down the Los Angeles school district today. And all I could think of...
Right, I saw that this morning. It's amazing.
All I could think of was...
Well, we are such...
Beslan. Did you remember Beslan from from Russia when the...
yes.
Yes, when the militants went in, the group like ISIS went in and started raping children and slaughtering children in an elementary school, and it was horrifying. And it's my greatest fear on what they could do to the public is come after our children.
Well, that's what I think everybody is first and foremost worried about, and we have such an open society, and we've enjoyed it for so long, and we've been so comfortable here behind our two oceans and with only Canada and Mexico on our borders that we've gotten very used to a life and a style of living that we're going to have to cut some corners on to protect ourselves from these idiots because they are after getting rid of us.
You know, there was a story from the 1800s about a guy who claimed that he was the Mahdi and he was going to reestablish the caliphate, and the way they stopped that movement, because it started to sweep across northern Africa, and the way they stopped it was some Muslims decided, well, if he's the Mahdi, he couldn't be killed. And they went in while he was sleeping, and I think they either poisoned him or they just stabbed him to death. One way or another, he woke up the next day dead. And then the whole thing just disappeared. Is there any thought to ways because they are operating on their own prophecy? That's why they want us in Dabiq and everything else. Isn't there some way to dismantle their prophecy to show them as a fraud?
I think there is, but I don't think we can do it by killing Baghdadi the way the Mahdi was killed in the 19th century. I think what we have to do is destroy their capital and their institutions. We have been so conscious of having our rules of engagement, or so conscious of having no civilian casualties, that we have been ignoring important military sites because they have stacked around them, just as Hamas does in Gaza, have stacked around them kindergartens and hospitals and so forth. And we left their tank trucks, I can't quite believe this, for a year, a series of them sitting beside the road with making about $1 million a day for ISIS.
Jim,
and we didn't want to bomb them because we didn't want to hurt the truck drivers.
We had our reporters from the Blaze. We sent them over with the Kurds, and we had it on tape. The tanker trucks going back and forth, and the Kurds were saying, nobody will allow us to shut this down, and we could shut this down today. So I want to take a break, and I want to come back and ask you why. Now, I made a case last night, and I'll open the break with that, but I want to hear your reason why and what you think we should be doing and preparing for now as a society. Back in a minute.
Doesn't matter at all.
That's from the special tomorrow for the Record, and we're talking to James Woolsey. He's a former CIA director, and that was him speaking. Jim, I have to tell you, that's the scariest thing that nobody in the press is even willing to talk about. You don't have to believe that they're the army of Armageddon, but they believe that they're the army of Armageddon. They believe it to the center of their soul. And so, yes, they will nuke Israel. They will nuke us because, you said it, they don't care. Is anyone in Washington who's an adult with any kind of power, does anybody even admit this or talk about this?
Very little. People in some of the think tanks who, excuse me, who write about these things are pretty good, but as part of the normal discourse of politics, no. I mean,
how do
we're a First Amendment country.
How do you possibly fight a battle with people that you refuse to recognize their fundamental driver?
We not only refuse to recognize that, but we speak politically correctly about them as if they're just violent folks occasionally, if they should turn into that at the office. It's nuts. You can't deal with something unless you can talk about it. Right. And you can't talk about it rationally unless you can ignore this political correctness nonsense.
How real do you think the threat is of something truly catastrophic? I think Beslan would be catastrophic in the long run, but I mean EMP catastrophic.
Well, the thing that worries me about that is that Iran has given every indication they would go forward with something like that, and they have ballistic missiles that can put something into orbit, and they are very close, I think. I think you can even make the case that they already have a nuclear weapon, but even if you don't want to go that far, they're, I think, very, very close. And with a nuclear weapon and something that can orbit it, they can use an electromagnetic pulse burst over the center of the United States to take down our electric grid, and that's we got 18 critical infrastructures in the country, and 17 of them depend on the 18th, electricity. So if the electricity goes, so does the food, so does the water, so do the hospitals, so does finance, sort of medicine.
It's 80% death rate and, within the first year.
Yeah, the Congressional Commission that looked at this had two views. One was 2/3, the other was 90%. So 80 is 80% roughly.
And we haven't done anything. It doesn't cost us that much to be able to protect. Why? Is it a searching for the normalcy bias in Washington that you just can't think these crazy thoughts?
I don't know. It is very hard. There are a few, Trent Franks, there are a few members of Congress who have been very helpful on this and tried to get it front and center. But in the executive branch, it's just not something they're dealing with. They're willing to talk about space weather, and since the phenomena are somewhat similar to a solar event that would be reflected in these magnetic waves that hit the Earth, since they're somewhat similar, maybe they can work on the solar weather side and not admit to themselves that they have to deal also with at least some additional capabilities against something like the Iranians letting loose against us. And the problem is the North Koreans can do that now because they have nuclear weapons and they have a ballistic missile that can put them into orbit. The Chinese and Russians can too. We're kind of used to dealing with them. The deterrence may work with them, but Lord knows whether deterrence works with the crazies that are running North Korea these days. And with Iran, it looks, as Bernard Lewis said, as if mutual assured destruction is an inducement, not a deterrent.
Thank you so much, Jim, for all of your hard work throughout the years, and please keep speaking out, and thank you for being on For the Record tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. God bless.